last speaker today. Closing it out, the closer today is Kevin Q. Kevin is a first generation and low income college graduate. He graduated from UC Irvine in 2016 and then went off to my alma mater, UC Berkeley, where he received his MBA earlier this year. Kevin launched his first mentorship program when he was 20 and has continued to launch programs with nonprofits, employee resource groups, and even Washington State. Now he's building a platform called Firstly to make online mentorship accessible and socioeconomically inclusive for students, colleges, and employers. He's worked with institutions such as Cal State University East Bay, UC Irvine, Chaminade University, and William Patterson University to launch the mentorship programs that increase student retention and help with job placement. Kevin, welcome, my friend.
Hey, Oscar, thanks so much for having me. And hey, everyone, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, but as I'm pulling that up, just kind of curious, where are you all coming from? Are you students, professionals? If you're with a college, just curious what colleges are in this room. So feel free to put that in the chat as I'm getting set up. Okay, hopefully you all can see my screen.
Yes.
Awesome. So first of all, welcome to this session about how to launch mentorship programs to share social capital at your institution or company. This presentation is intended to give you an actionable roadmap of how you can implement low-lift yet high-impact mentorship programs. So before diving in, I just really encourage you, if you have any questions, feel free to just put it in the chat and I'll try to answer them as they come up. Otherwise, I will have some questions or some time for questions at the end. So feel free to ask there too. Once again, I'm Kevin Hu. I'm the founder and CEO of Firstly. So my family and I immigrated from rural China to the States because we were tired of being poor. I graduated from college, started my career, and finally achieved social and economic mobility. But everyone around me wasn't as lucky. 90% of first-gen and low-income college students drop out, and those who do graduate aren't guaranteed jobs. So I had to ask myself, why was I any different? I realized that I had supportive mentors every step of the way. And so now I'm making sure that all students and professionals have access to high quality mentorship. Like Oscar said, launched my first mentorship program when I was 3. I've continued to launch programs with colleges, employee resource groups, and even Washington State. And so here at Firstly, our mission is to accelerate social mobility. And we do so by helping colleges and employers launch online mentorship programs that increase student retention and job placement rates. Before diving into the meat of this presentation, just wanted to give you a brief roadmap. We've spent about 5 minutes on introductions, but we'll spend the next 15 talking about mentorship planning and execution. And you'll get an actionable framework that you can use to make this happen at your organization. This includes program design, participant recruitment, program delivery, and outcomes gathering. I'm also going to talk about some documents and key deliverables that we use in each stage of this process to make it easier. And then last but not least, we'll have some questions for Q&A. So let's dive in with the short amount of time that we have. This is what planning and executing a mentorship program usually looks like. It's a bunch of jumbled up forms, spreadsheets, and slides for your orientation deck, participant signups, pre-program survey, post-program surveys, curriculum, assignment tracking, matching, testimonials, analysis of outcomes. Are you overwhelmed? Well, you're not the only one. Most higher education professionals we've talked with see tremendous value in mentorship, but they don't have enough time and staff needed to launch more programs, especially when they're already having trouble staying afloat with existing programming. But this makes a lot of sense. These challenges make a lot of sense when what they're used to in mentorship planning and execution looks like a jumbled mess. But it doesn't have to be this way. Here at Firstly, we break down the mentorship lifecycle into 4 distinct phases: program design, participant recruitment, program delivery, and outcomes gathering. So let's start with program design. We use one guiding question in each of these stages to help us determine the best strategy for each unique mentorship program. In program design, we ask, who is this program even for? Is it for first-gen students? What year are they in college? Are they commuters, transfers? This is foundational because a program for first-gen freshmen might focus more on sense of belonging and therefore have more peer interactions as opposed to juniors in college who are more focused on career development. It's really important to document the persona of both the students and the mentors, because we're going to refer back to this in the later phases of this process. This is going to impact your pre and post assessment, the metrics that you use, as well as the overall program outline that you have. Here at Firstly, we've pulled together programs from a variety of colleges so that you can get inspiration on what other colleges are doing. You don't need to start from scratch because there's so many resources like this available already. Moving on to the next phase, let's talk about participant recruitment. So there's this quote that I always go back to. It takes a village to raise a child. This is especially true in higher education when we need to work together to better support students. What this means in participant recruitment is what support can we get from other campus offices? For example, if you're running a career development program, you might want to reach out to the Alumni Association because you can have them help you recruit alumni volunteers and industry specialists. Building partnerships within this space also breaks down the silos that exist on campuses so that we can better serve students. During this phase, you're going to want to draft messaging that resonates for that student demographic and identify other ways to reach them aside from just the emails that you send out. One example of this is if you're targeting freshman students, for example, you might want to collaborate with housing on campus to better reach the freshmen and get information to them within their dorms. This is just one way that we can leverage a multi-channel outreach and awareness to better increase the recruitment process for mentors and mentees. Let's move on to program delivery now. How are students willing and able to participate? As you're going through this process, it's really important to think about the fit between the modality and the personas. One example I can give you is that mentors find the online format a lot easier, especially if they are career professionals already. Therefore, if you have an online modality for participation, you can get a lot more people to participate and a lot of breadth as it comes to industry expertise. However, one challenge with this is that you need to provide proper training beforehand to the mentors so that they know how to interact with the students, but more importantly, to make sure that they know how to interact with your demographic of students. If you're in a campus office that serves first-gen students, there's a lot that you understand about their experience that mentors might not understand right off the bat. So it's very important that the mentors understand the students that they're working with. One drawback, however, of online events is that students typically are Zoom fatigued. Just from my experience being in Zoom meeting all days, it's super exhausting and overwhelming. So if you do go with an online format, it's important to minimize large group events and perhaps prioritize more one-on-one sessions where you're able to actually have a connection between the mentors and the mentees. So, once again, depending on the personas of the students that you're trying to serve, as well as who you're targeting for the mentors, you need to understand the trade-offs between these different approaches. Now, in terms of the more tactical implementation of this, one thing I want to note is that an attendance and participation tracker that's shared with everyone has really helped us. Just having one central place for the requirements of the students is going to be so helpful because it's a portal that they can go back to once they forget. Students, of course, are like super busy while they're in school with all these clubs and balancing midterms and finals and all of that. And it's going to get busy during the semester. So you want to make sure as a program person that's launching a program, make sure you plan a lot of the reminders and outreach beforehand, and maybe even have that scheduled and automated. Otherwise, you're just going to be scrambling throughout the program to remind folks to complete their assignments. Now, one newer way of program delivery that we're seeing is online flash mentorship. The distinction between online flash mentorship is that it's meant to be low lift for the mentors, especially if they can't commit to like a 10-week program where they meet every week. A lot of them are able to, at the bare minimum, just meet once a month with a student and provide specific feedback on like a resume, interview preparation, or their LinkedIn profile. So these are different ways that you can bring in a wider group of individuals and just experiment with different program modalities for your mentorship program. So moving on to this next section for outcomes gathering, it's really important to ask, what does success look like for both the program and the student? Some common things that we see are sense of belonging, especially for freshmen and sophomores, the job placement rate, more relevant for juniors and seniors, and finally, student retention, which is a really important one for sophomores because at a lot of institutions, the sophomore class has the highest dropout or churn rate. So when we look at the outcomes gathering process, it's really important to think about both qualitative and quantitative data. As you're going through this program, you have this big opportunity to do participant experience interviews, just 15, 20-minute check-ins with your mentees to see how they're doing, to see what issues they might be having in accessing these resources. And this information is going to be invaluable for both your testimonials and just understanding how to iterate on this process for the next semester or the next year if you're running this kind of program on an annual basis. You also get a better idea of what kinds of students are drawn to your program. And this is especially important because sometimes you might launch programs that are meant for first-gen students, but this is like a business program, and not a lot of the students who actually join are first gen. So you'll be able to get a better idea of this for the next semesters and just know how to cater your message so that you're actually helping the student population that you're wanting to help. Now, I will say one thing about the outcomes and gathering process. It takes a little bit of time to get testimonials, and it takes a little bit of time for your specific program to kick off and infiltrate the culture within your institution. So as you get more of these testimonials, it's really going to signal to students who haven't heard about the program that, hey, this is something that's valuable. So you'll probably see this entire process of launching a new program a lot easier once it has kind of settled in within the culture. The most important thing I would say for the outcomes gathering process is that longitudinal data is key. You're only going to be able to know so much about your outcomes if you're just doing a pre and post program survey, because, for example, job placement, you don't see the results until 1 or 2 years after. So it's really important to maintain a relationship with your participants. And not only that, by maintaining that relationship, you're also going to be able to create a mentor pool that you can, outreach to perhaps like the next year as they become a peer mentor instead of just a participant. So I know that this 15-minute session about mentorship just doesn't do it justice because it is a very complicated process and a lot of moving parts, but I'm really hoping that this has given you some ideas of what you want to focus on as you're planning and executing your mentorship program. So here at Firstly, we've built a mentorship program platform for students, colleges, employers that really make this mentorship life cycle less overwhelming and complicated. Essentially, we take care of the tactical components of mentorship and delivery so that you can focus more on the strategic side of your programs. And so our hope is that by making these programs easier for organizations to launch, more students can have access to impactful mentorship locally. Well, thanks so much for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions, but before I do that, I'm just going to paste a Google form onto the Zoom chat. If you're interested in learning more about Firstly, or if you need help launching a mentorship program, just take a minute to submit the interest form and we'll make sure to reach out accordingly. But aside from that, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and shoot me an email if you want to connect. And happy to answer any questions from anyone on the call. Just feel free to unmute or whatever's easy for you.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. And please, folks, like Kevin said, you can either drop it in the chat or unmute yourself. Kevin, a question for you. So as things are beginning, as colleges, universities are beginning to open up again and welcome students back on campus. These last 2.5 years, it's like we've gotten used to online. In fact, you and I, like many other people here, speakers, we've never met in person. It's just been online. So can you speak to the importance of the value of creating a mentorship relationship with what I call the high tech and the high touch approach?
Yeah. So I'm gonna the way that I kind of interpret that question is how do we balance modalities? Because people
Yes.
find value in the in-person, but online is here to stay. Is that kind of the essence of your
Yes.
question, Oscar?
Yes.
Yeah. So, first of all, the world is just changing. COVID has engendered this huge shift in online, and that's just not going to go away. And so, the way that I think about that problem is that how do we create this experience of both online and in person? So it's essentially a hybrid modality is going to go a long way. Obviously the advantages of online is that students are able to connect with a wider breadth of mentors, and it's a lot easier to do that, especially for first gen students who might be working 20 to 30 hours a week, and with your schedule that's often changing, online just makes that easier. But the way that you can supplement that with that in-person interaction is maybe having an orientation that's actually in person for the students to meet each other, for the mentors who are able to attend, and just kind of closing that off at the end with some kind of ceremony that celebrates the successes during the program. That way they're able to access the just really the easiness of an online program while still maintaining that in-person connection that's really important for these group activities. So that's a kind of line between both. But I think in a lot of ways, we're all still adapting to this world and just seeing what balance works the best. So
Yes.
we can offer some insights from some of our partners who have been through that, but it's going to look different for each student body, of course.
Sure. Sure. Um, Another question, Kevin, is so I'm interested in being a mentor. I've never mentored before. So my first time as a mentor. What are maybe one, two, or three tips of advice that you would give me in order to foster a healthy, sustainable mentorship relationship?
Oh yeah, that's really important. I think as mentors, you're in this kind of unique role because you have a personal connection with the student and you're able to identify what some of their needs are, but at the same time it's really important for a mentor to set boundaries with their students. We say boundaries, but really what I mean by that is having expectations of how to engage. If you're not able to be super present on text messaging all the time, just at least make that known. Maybe it's a matter of, hey, like what I want to do is to have a monthly meeting with you every month. I'm not going to be as able to respond on an as needed basis, but I'm going to, at least check my messaging on the weekends, for example. Obviously, mentors and professionals are really busy, so expressing some of those boundaries up front is just going to be really important for the success of like yourself and your own like mental health and not feeling overwhelmed. One more thing I'd like to add to that is the best mentors always listen and understand their mentees before offering and giving feedback. When we are showing up as mentors, it really should be more about the mentee than yourself. I know there's a lot of positive feelings associated with being a mentor, but at the end of the day, it's the program isn't necessarily to help you. It's for you to pay it forward and kind of lift others up. And so when you're giving prescriptive kind of mentorship advice, that's typically not as helpful for the mentees. And they could usually tell in these sessions as well. So if you're having a session and you with a mentee and you have the same kind of session with every mentee and you talk about the same things, then you're probably not tailoring that experience enough to that person.
Yeah. Ooh, great points here. Thank you, Kevin. Um, Kevin, I'm really glad that we were able to connect through this summit, you and I, and as I've gotten to know you and what your company offers, it's awesome. And I also feel just very fortunate that we came across because I love engaging with people that are doing something about a challenge that they personally experienced versus kind of like a woe is me. You're more of like, how can I make it better for others? And so I appreciate that about you, Kevin. Thank you for joining us on this First Gen Summit. And again, Kevin, and I think either Brittany or Angelica, one of them also dropped a link to connect with him on LinkedIn. So please, folks, connect with Kevin. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks so much for having me, and have a good rest of your day, everyone.